Hey, what's up YouTube? You are watching Ready, Set, Drone, and today I am here with someone who's going to help you learn how to make money selling stock video from your drone, so stay tuned. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Today, I've got Vinnie Fallico with me. Vinnie is a friend of mine. He is a contractor who works with us as a video producer and shooter and editor and photographer at times. And also, he's a Part 107 drone pilot who has helped me not only at my normal job, but also at my YouTube job. So welcome, Vinnie.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So you got your Part 107 and you started doing drone videography and photography for clients. Like, what's a typical gig that you might do for a client?
A lot of it kind of started out as, doing commercial work, and I really love doing that, and kind of doing more of kind of the production and the more of the film side of things. And I just got so into that. But that's, as you know, having a video production company, there's ebbs and flows. You get really busy, and then sometimes you have a lull. And so I was really trying to look for a way to kind of stabilize everything, and that's how I kind of stumbled into stock footage. And now I've been doing that for about 3 years now.
And what kind of, if you don't mind sharing, like what's your typical month, or what's the variation of revenue that you're making doing that now?
Yeah, it's come a long way. I think in November of 2017 was my first ever sale. And it sold for $37, and I freaked out. It's like only $37, but the fact that I just made that passively, I wasn't working. It was just online.
You had already done the work at that
point. I had already done the work, and it was pretty exciting to have that come in and not have to be somewhere, So that kind of opened up a lot of doors. But since then, it's grown a bunch. It's anywhere from, I would say, $1,500 to $2,500 a month passively. So it's come a long way from the $37.
So literally you get a check or a series of checks from different stock agencies that total between $1,500 and $2,500 depending on the month.
Yeah.
And at this point, you could probably stop shooting and still get that check for a few months or even a couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. And most of the stuff that I'm uploading is in 4K. And most of the clips that I typically sell, I'd say probably 90%, I still sell in HD. So it's pretty future-proof overall, So whatever I've uploaded up until this point can run for quite a while, I think. So the idea of that is pretty cool.
So you said you got your first check in 2017, and now it's 2020. Mm-hmm. So is it too late for other people to get into this?
I don't think so. I think overall, the stock footage market is pretty saturated, but as far as the aerial side of things, I think there's still an opportunity there.
Well, one of the things that I find is that, flying a DJI drone, a camera drone with GPS, it isn't that hard to do, right? Most people can master the basics of it.
Yeah.
But you take it to the next level with the way that you shoot, the way you compose, the things that you do in post-production, the extra steps you take to make your footage really stand out.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
So you've taken the time, especially having some downtime with COVID and stuff, to create a class, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the class you created. What's it called, and what will people learn?
As with most video production companies, we had a lot of downtime in most companies, I guess, in general with COVID going on. And so I decided to make this class and teach people how I go about doing what I do with selling the stock footage online. And the official title is, I think it's Earn 2K a month with drone stock footage, or some variation. I guess I have it titled in different places, different ways, but yeah, that's the overall idea, and I'm really excited to release it. I'm actually releasing it the 22nd, so I'm not sure when this video is going to come out, but I'm excited to finally get it out there. So.
Well, I watched the class. I actually took the entire class. I have a certificate. I should have brought my certificate in.
It's around here somewhere.
I
saw it earlier. So.
That's all right, Thomas. We'll just do it. We can do a cutaway shot to it or something. But I took the class, and there were many things in that class that you taught that I really didn't think of, wasn't aware of, or just hadn't understood that there's a better way to do it. And so I feel like I got value out of watching that class.
Awesome.
And the audience here today who's watching, if you haven't left, because a lot of people drop off early in videos, but if you've stuck around to this point, Vinnie is now going to share with you some of the highlights from that class. So even if you don't take his class, you'll learn some things right now. But if you want to learn more, of course, you can take his class. Vinnie, what would you say with someone who's just starting out or wants to get into selling drone stock photography? What are some tips that you have that could help people get found and sell more of it?
I think the biggest thing for me and my biggest selling clips have all been hyperlapses for the most part. I have quite a few, I don't know, probably a couple hundred at this point, of all different places around the world. And I think the biggest thing for me was, for a long time, I was just taking the HD version of the drone from the drone, and then maybe doing a little color correction, and then kind of calling that good. And I kind of stumbled along the way that there's a different way to do it. That's kind of the short and sweet method. And then there's the long method, which is, it's definitely a pain and it's long, but I think the end result is definitely worth the time.
What is that long method?
So it's instead of taking the video, it's shooting raw stills and then stitching all of that together in post. And so you have a lot more flexibility with the image on, you have a lot more dynamic range. It's raw, so you can do whatever you want to do with the colors. Overall, you just have a wider field of view. So it's, I think you just get a better image overall, and there is more work, but I think it pays off down the road.
So Vinnie, I know in one of these shots you shot downtown Austin that you put a lot of time into the class to show us how you took it from kind of a good shot to a really great shot.
Yeah, and again, I think, it goes back to taking the HD version that the drone kind of spits out to you, and then walks you through exactly how to do it, and should get that 4K kind of raw version. And I'll show both versions here, the HD one first, and then the edited 4K one.
And so you just said this is probably number one thing to note for anybody who wants to sell stock drone video, hyperlapses.
Yeah.
They're the best, your best seller.
Yeah, hands down. I have a couple clips that, one specifically of Austin that's, if you go into Shutterstock or Pond 5 and you just type in Texas or Austin or anything related to Texas, it's usually like the first 2 or 3 clips that pop up.
Wow.
And it's, they're definitely not all like that by any means, but yeah, those clips have definitely been my biggest sellers, and really a couple of them I've only shot maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and they're all my all-time best sellers.
So it sounds like you kind of gave us 2 tips there, and tip number 1 is get a drone that can do hyperlapses that you can set waypoints with and create, that even if you aren't going to use the automated hyperlapse, you can set the drone to shoot raw photos along the way, and then you can take those raw photos. And that's tip 2, is to actually take the raw photos and create the hyperlapse yourself. Yeah. So it sounds like really, if you want to get into doing stock drone videography or photography, you need to know a little bit about Photoshop and or be decent at Photoshop or Premiere or Final Cut or something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, just with editing video in general, some kind of NLE would be great. Obviously, I use Premiere, but you can do the same thing in Final Cut. And pretty much, for those specific hyperlapses, it's all done in mainly Lightroom. If there's a couple things I want to change, occasionally I'll use Photoshop, but mainly Lightroom, and then occasionally After Effects if there's some crazy stabilization stuff that I need to do. But it's mainly just your NLE, Final Cut, or Premiere, and then Lightroom. Or you can also use any photo editor, really.
Okay. So again, as tip 1, shoot hyperlapses. Those sell well. And tip 2, don't use the HD version that the drone creates for you. Actually create one yourself in 4K.
Yeah, definitely.
What's tip 3?
Tip 3 would be shooting at golden hour. That's, if you guys don't know, golden hour is the most beautiful time of day. It's either sunsets or sunrises, and You get those little pings of light off buildings and through trees, and you get the lens flares, and it's just it definitely makes for good footage. And again, that's most of my footage online, and definitely some of my biggest sellers. Okay, so on this next shot, we're in Fort Lauderdale, and I'm kind of pushing through a couple buildings and showing a sailboat, and it's obviously golden hour. You can see the city in the background. You know, if I shot that during the day at, you know, say 2 o'clock, it would be a very different view. And so shooting during golden hour really has those kind of special qualities where, you know, you get all the cool colors and you get the pings off the water in the buildings, and that's why it's so kind of attractive, especially on the stock footage market. And another thing is, you know, I think it's similar to YouTube as well, is the thumbnail is super important.
It really is. Yep.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with stock footage. If you have just kind of a regular old, you know, cityscape, people most of the time are going to click on it. But if you have a beautiful sunset with, you know, buildings and everything's lit up really pretty, people are a lot more likely to click on it and check it out and potentially buy it.
So shoot at golden hour. That's great advice for photography or videography.
Just in general, yeah.
But for stock, you know, if you're really planning your day around that, maybe you go out twice a day. You go out in the morning, recharge batteries, and then go out in the evening.
And then hit it again at night. Yeah, for sure.
So Vinnie, in taking your class, one of the cool things about it is I got to see a lot of your work, a lot of the hyperlapses that you have put out and other shots that you put out. I noticed one thing that you often do is you do like reveals where you start behind something. Tell me a little bit about that technique and why it works so well.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a tease kind of for the audience. You know, if you have a beautiful mountain range or a cityscape or whatever it is, if you kind of give it all away at first, you're not interested in it and wanting to see that next frame, you know. But if you kind of start behind something and then do that reveal, it just keeps the viewer intrigued, I guess, a little bit longer and more excited to see whatever it is that you're revealing, I suppose.
So how do you go about doing that? Like, how do you set up a shot?
A lot of the times it just depends on the situation, you know, like I said, if you have a cityscape here and say this laptop is some trees, you know, instead of just flying 200 feet up and flying straight at it, it can create a little bit more depth and, you know, kind of tension in the shot, I guess, to, you know, reveal up and over.
Come over the trees and see it. Well, you have a great example of where you were in Iceland and you were flying through a glacier and then you reveal some mountains, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of started super low, and I'll probably throw it on the screen here too, but started super low, kind of down in the glacier, and then over time kind of slowly rose up and then revealed kind of the landscape behind us.
So that's a great tip, and it's something that, again, rather than just showing the thing right away, anytime you can give people a reason to continue watching the clip, it's going to be so much better. Their interest is going to be higher. And if you're shooting at golden hour and you're doing a hyperlapse and you're doing it all manually, add all these things together and your clips will really stand out. Now, tell us a little bit about just kind of the mindset you have to do this, right? In 2017, you made your first $37 or whatever you said it was. You're super excited, but you know, you can't live on $37.
Yeah, definitely not.
What would you tell your past self today? Like if you could talk to Vinnie in 2017, if 2020 Vinnie could talk to 2017 Vinnie, what advice would you give 2017 Vinnie about it? Do you wish you had done more early on? Do you wish you had gone harder at the beginning? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I think just honestly, it's a numbers game because you can have, you know, if you have 10 beautiful hyperlapses, unless your metadata is on point and everything works perfectly, even though those clips are great, it's still in the giant web of stock footage that can still be kind of tough to find, you know? So it's definitely a numbers game, and the more you have, obviously the quality matters as well, but the more you have, the more you're gonna make. It's relatively straightforward. So I wish I would've gone, like you said, I wish I would've gone harder at the beginning and even done more aerial stuff. I started out doing some, you know, gimbal work and whatnot, and I've had a handful of those sell, but nothing in comparison to what I've done with the drone.
You think the drone footage really, and now in your class you kind of recommend different drones for different things. So we're not going to necessarily talk about it here, but if you want to know, you know, what's the best drone to do stock video and photography with, you use a Phantom 4 Pro, right? But there are others that are good for it as well, right?
Yeah, I also have the Mavic 2 Pro. That's kind of been in the last year, I think, or so, that's probably been my main stock footage drone, just because it's It's so much smaller. Doesn't sound like a giant hornet's nest flying around. It's a little bit quieter than the Phantom 4 Pro, so that's good. And yeah, it's just a little bit smaller. I can get in and out of places a little bit easier. I don't have like this giant Pelican that I'm carrying around, so I can throw it in a backpack. It's just easier to get around. So I use that quite a bit more than the Phantom 4 Pro now. As far as for stock footage, if I'm doing commercial work, then I'll usually switch over.
And so without getting into too much detail, because obviously, you want people to take the class. I'm not making any money on the class, but I want Vinny to be successful because he's a great guy. Without giving away too much, what are other things people will learn? You don't have to teach them right now, but what are things they could learn by taking your class?
I break a lot of things down as far as I get somewhat technical, which for right now isn't the best thing, but specifically, on those hyperlapses, I go through of not just like, okay, just shoot raw and it'll be great. I go through of, what should your aperture be? What should your shutter speed be? Where your ISO should be? What ND filters you should use? Should you use an ND filter? What should your white balance be on? Like all the technical side of things. To try to get those best hyperlapses. And I kind of break that down for just regular shooting as well. What's the sharpest aperture, and more of kind of the technical side of things where it's, I dive in a little bit more depth than I obviously would here. So.
And then as far as actually flying the drone, you do a lot of stuff with that. What are some of the things people will learn about how to fly, like the waypoints they pick and the camera moves to make and such?
Yeah, I cover that as well as, breaking down the different movements of not just being 300 feet in the air and flying straight, because it's not super dynamic, and it can be cool depending on the situation, but it's definitely nice to be maybe a little bit lower and, add some dynamic movement, especially if you're doing those hyperlapses, having those waypoints and showing some movement.
And Vinny gets, just so you know, he gets very, very specific about how he did some of these shots. Like there's a shot of a Ferris wheel at night that is really cool, and you go into a lot of detail about how that was done, which I thought it was pretty cool to see. Yeah. There were things that you said that I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that, but once he said it, I was like, that makes sense. And then as far as like the more of the mechanics of how to upload and which sites to choose and how to create titles and metadata, you go into a lot of detail on that, is right.
I tried to break it down to make it as easy as possible, and it took me a long time to figure out how to title things and how to input keywords and descriptions and all that. Again, it's not exciting by any means, but it's really important because, again, if you have beautiful clips, but it's just labeled Austin or United States, no one's ever going to find it. So it's just really important to be able to put that in there and do so in an efficient manner, I suppose.
I think it is exciting because it's money making, right? It's really, to me, that's like the secret sauce that helps your videos. Just like on YouTube, this is it's a lot of similarities to how it works on these platforms. Now, as far as people wanting to take the class, we'll put links in the descriptions on how you can go in and take the class. There's a couple of different platforms that it's on. And of course, comment below if you're interested. If you have questions, Vinny will be checking the comments in this video to answer questions about becoming a stock drone pilot. You probably should get your Part 107 if you're going to do this on a regular basis. You could maybe dip your toe in the water and fly safely. But if you are going to do this on a regular basis, I would definitely recommend taking some Part 107 classes. Remote Pilot 101 is what I took. I agree that the video from Chelsea and Tony Northrop.
Yeah, they did a great job on that.
I watched that video as well when I was studying. But there's lots of great resources. Remote Pilot 101 being one of my favorites. But anyway, Vinny, so awesome to have you here today, and thank you for sharing some of those tips on how you do this. And man, keep up the great work because your stuff looks really great.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Leave people with right now is, you said something that really stuck with me. You said that you have a few clips that are only a couple of months old or even weeks old that are doing really well. Is that exciting? Because if they are doing well now and they continue to do well, that could kind of snowball, right? I mean, ultimately,
exactly.
Is it your plan to hope to make enough money to live off of your stock and then do, gig work as a side hustle?
Yeah, pretty much. Honestly, like I'm a big traveler. I love traveling all over the place, and I think it shows in my stock footage. And my goal is to get to that point where I can live off this full time. Not quite there yet, but it'd be awesome to get to that point. And yeah, the fact that a couple of these clips haven't been up there that long and they're doing pretty well is pretty exciting because it kind of keeps the wheel going and gets you excited about it again, and always encourages you to keep going and keep creating. So
And it shows you what works, right? You can look at those and go, oh, I need to do more like this.
Yeah, I need to do more hyperlapses. I need to shoot at golden hour more, and yeah, you just develop strategies over time, and I break that down all in the course. So
nice. Well, check out Vinnie's class. Put a link below, and if you have questions or comments, please be sure to leave them down there. Vinnie, thank you so much for coming in today.
Having me. I appreciate it.
And we'll see you next time on Ready, Set, Drone. Take care.